Hey everyone, it is May 6th. Hopefully everyone's Cinco de Mayo hangover isn't too bad. We have a wonderful webinar today with business leaders and also HR leaders to share how they are responding to coronavirus, making business changes, going through loans, HR challenges. The topic is really, survive and thrive, how we're all getting through this together and learning from each other. To find new ways for our businesses to succeed. So just to get started, we're going to have everyone go and around and introduce themselves, where they're from, a little bit about what their business does, and also one sort of icebreaker question, which is what's the most coronavirus stereotypical thing that you've done? Have you picked up sourdough bread? Have you given yourself an awkward haircut? Just one fun thing, and then we'll pass the mic to the next person. So Eric, can you kick this off?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Lydia. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today. I'm Eric Henry. I'm the president and owner of Summit Wine Tastings. I'm based in Dallas, Texas, and my company does in-store wine tastings in major grocery store and liquor store chains in Illinois and Texas, and we've been in business for 10 years. And Workstream, which is sponsoring this talk today, is one of my third-party vendors that has really helped me grow my business and recruit many independent contractors over the years. And I guess my coronavirus would be that I actually given myself a haircut, but I have actually given my husband 2 different haircuts, and he actually got some compliments on them. So who knows what's next?
Next business.
Yes, who knows?
Shelley.
Well, hello, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm Shelley Schamach. I'm the head of people at Equator Coffees, which is a Northern California based out of Marin County coffee roastery, and we have 8 retail locations. Big business and wholesale, or we did have that. And let's see, yeah, no, I haven't had a haircut since January, so I'm gonna see how long I can go. And I know that's not the question. I think the most COVID thing I've done is I've started buying some glamorous masks because I don't know how long this is gonna go on, so decided to mask it up. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Theresea Morgan. Thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure. I'm the recruiting manager at ZeroCater. We actually are a B2B catering technology platform, and we feed in 6 different markets across the US, but we're headquartered in San Francisco. However, I'm based in Austin, and I'm going to actually play off of Shelley. I actually started making masks, and I don't sew. But I couldn't buy one anywhere. Nobody had them. So I said, okay, I better figure this out on my own. So now I'm a mask maker. It's my side hustle. So.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jerome. I'm based in LA. I founded BlankSpaces co-working about 12 years ago, and I'm the architect for that as well. My stereotypical COVID-19 is my wife and my 2 kids. We have daily phys ed at around 4 p.m. every day. We just go out, jump rope, and run around something, or just lie under the sun. It's getting warmer. So.
Great, and I'm Lydia. I'm from Workstream, and the most sort of pandemic trapped inside thing I've done is to start training my dog on a lot of tricks, because I figured, why not? Now's the time to learn how to like jump through my arms and other weird things. So that's fun. But yeah, anyway, to kick it off, I'm going to be closing out the slides so that we can see everyone's beautiful faces. But would really just love to chat about sort of what the sort of status of each of your companies are in terms of having to close locations. Would really like to start this with Shelley, since you guys have had to go through the process of closing and then reopening, and discuss how that's gone.
Yeah, absolutely. Fortunately, we have a fantastic president and CEO and leader of retail, so it's been really seamless. We closed on March 16th and closed all our locations for about 2.5 weeks. We had to wait until we had everything in line for our employees and our customers' health and wellness. I mean, most important is we do it right. Fortunately, we had been testing mobile order and pay, and we wanted a seamless, no contact. How do we still provide product to people without ever having to have them pay in person? And so it was beautiful timing. We were able to, in those 2.5 weeks, get everything up and running, and you know, along with all the local and government ordinances and OSHA, because you have to really want to make sure that you're really clear in your verbal and nonverbal communication with the public as to where to stand, how to distance, what we're doing. So that's, yeah, it's been great. So far, so good. We opened one first, and then we opened a second. We decided we needed to have one in every locality. We're now up to 6. We just have 2 in downtown San Francisco we have not opened.
And Jerome, you also sort of, with your co-working spaces, maintained some of the business operations. How is that going, and how have you sort of shifted people's schedules with the closures?
Yeah, so we provide essential services to our clients because we manage their mail and packages, and a lot of businesses rely on that while they're working from home. So what we did was we trimmed down our operations to just 2 afternoons per week to sort and distribute mail and packages. Otherwise, the people who already had 24/7 access or any access at all, prior members could continue to come in and work if they wanted to. But that was really only amounted to about maybe 10% of the usual foot traffic. So they have their distancing, they have the separation kind of built in because there's very few people there.
Yeah. And Theresea, you know, at ZeroCater, you don't have sort of the physical locations. Instead, you're bringing, you know, things to people. What are you seeing with all the different geographies you're in terms of your customers thinking about like going back into the office and what people's schedules are? How are different locations responding to the reopening plans?
Yeah, great question. So we're, like as I mentioned, in 6 different markets. So a lot of it will depend on, you know, what governments are allowing. Here in Texas, offices, you know, there are certain things that have opened already. And, you know, obviously we want to make sure that we're safe because we do have physical offices. We have offices in 3 of the cities that we feed in. But we're really trying to follow, we want to make sure obviously we're doing it all safely and making the adjustments that we need to, whether it's our own office or we have people who are at a client site. And so that's what we've been really busy rallying right now to do and make sure that we have, you know, policies and procedures in place that are following regulations. But obviously the tricky part is we're in so many different states that we have to follow certain things in San Francisco that are going to be, you know, different in New York. So just really being very adamant about knowing what the regulations are, you know, utilizing every resource that we can. There's a lot of companies who've actually put out a lot of great different HR resources and just reading up on everything that we possibly can. Typically as a company, when we implement something in one office, we try to do it throughout the entire company. So we don't have to say, well, Austin does this and New York does this and San Francisco is going to do this. So there might be things that we may do in certain locations that might not be required, but we will still do them because they might be required in another office. And we want to make sure that we're maintaining consistency amongst our procedures.
Yeah. And by the way, we have, if you go to the Workstream resources for COVID resources, links for, you know, small businesses, both external links and also just, we now have, I believe, 25 different articles we've written for coronavirus procedures and helpful tips, including posters that you can print out. So for, you know, extra hand washing tips, and then also sort of the standard like recommended procedures for, you know, how to inform your, I know, employees about sort of, if you show these symptoms, this is what you should do. So we've compiled those and made them very easy for people to print. You can just download the PDFs.
That's great. I'll have to check that out. Thanks for sharing that.
We're always, as people come in with like, this is what we need to do, we're always like, that's a great idea. We should do an article about it, which is why our content team's been knocking out so much of that. Eric, I wanted to shift you for a moment. With the locations, you typically go into stores and, other, just a wide variety of places to do wine tastings. Yesterday in our prep call, you mentioned sort of with your business pivot, like having to, making the switch to more online and building out your social media. How is that going? And how, are you continuing to engage with the companies that you regularly work with?
Well, as everybody knows, the wine industry has taken a major hit by the coronavirus shutdown. And since my company goes into grocery stores and liquor stores every weekend to do in-store wine promotions, we haven't done one of those since March 12th. And so my entire team of independent contractors was suddenly lost a stream of income and work that they were used to doing. And in the stores, we're there to promote our winery's brands and to try to make the sales immediately. And since we're no longer able to do that, we are waiting to hear back from the stores, and it would be a store-based decision when they are ready to start welcoming the promotions companies back into their stores. And we don't really have any indication to when that is going to be happening. And it will be a different environment when we get there. So in the meantime, to try to maintain relevancy with my customers and with my team as well, I stay in contact with everyone by email. With my independent, I try to help them and steer them towards financial resources like the PPP program. Many states' unemployment agencies are actually allowing independent contractors to file claims, even though they aren't typically eligible for those benefits, but it's been very challenging for them to get through. And for myself, I have been trying to reimagine and reinvent how to go about the business of doing wine tastings. And what we're working on right now is some social media marketing. So I'm a new person on Instagram. It's a brand new platform for me. So I've started giving some wine tips and wine ideas on my account. And I'm also in the process of working with my existing wineries on some strategies that we can work together to do some virtual wine tastings. And this is a brand new platform for everybody. And so we're really in the beginning stages, and it's a paradigm shift for all of us. Very challenging, but we're definitely up to the challenge.
Yeah, there's so much going on right now. You mentioned PPP, and I know, Jerome, you've actually done extensive research on that to look into it for your own employees. Would you mind sharing sort of some of the things that you've uncovered and what your sort of status is with PPP?
Sure. I applied about a month ago.
Yeah. That's fine.
So I applied about, is it for Eric? Sorry.
No.
Go ahead, Jerome.
Yeah, for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I applied about a month ago, and actually for my 4 entities, I applied for about 7 or 8 different lenders. And then the original one, Bank of America, which somehow just came through. And so I got my money on Monday. It's been great. So it pays for the next 8 weeks. I've been uncovering a lot of details about how to pay for it, and they are strict in some cases, but with a little creativity, I think it can really help you. For example, it does pay for some of the medical premiums you're paying for your employees. It pays for state and local taxes. The employer, state and payroll taxes, but does not pay for the federal. And I think for most people, the federal will be 6, 7, 8%. So that will still come out of your pocket. Yeah, and so actually, my headcount went down recently because I couldn't bring in the back, or they had already left anyway. It's just coincidental. So I actually brought on a 1099 as a W-2 to meet the headcount, and then help the 1099 out.
Okay. Shelley, what is your opinion on PPP?
Well, we've been granted one, so we're very fortunate. And I think what my opinion is that things are unraveling by the day. Today I got a call this morning just on one of the things, are we tracking? We're very fortunate because we brought 40 people back that weren't working. We've brought someone from wholesale back to retail. So I think, you know, this is the first I've heard that you can use medical expenses that Jerome just said. So I guess it's just uncovering. It's like such an onion, peeling it back and crying at the same time.
That's why we're here, and to share and like learn from each other, because we're all, I mean, everyone's just spending so much time like researching different aspects of this that, you know, we love sort of having the panels and then also having them fully transcribed so people can like, we can point to things and they can skim and be like, oh, I should contact this person, you know, maybe reach out on LinkedIn. They seem to be very knowledgeable in this space. But yeah, and you know, both, you know, Shelley and Theresea, being in the food space, there's so many additional sort of things that you need to consider, even as we go back and we reopen. Shelley, how is that going, you know, for you? And then Theresea, I'd love to just dig in more about your like long-term shifts. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of different things that go into that. We've gotten into, like I said, this mobile order and pay, even though it's food, but still there's, right, health code, all the different regulations that must be true. But we've decided to sell provisions. So we started selling yeast and flour and eggs and avocados. And with that, you know, that's different. And it's a lot of, there's just education and training. And then we've done these partnerships where we'll be selling Smitten ice cream and rustic bakery bread, and you know, bringing the local teams along as well. So yeah, health and safety. It's
yeah.
Yeah.
And Theresea, I mean, you for ZeroCater, you're making the switch to more box lunches, right?
Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that we have that as a safe option. You know, people are going to be nervous about going back into the workplace, and you know, somebody else even touching maybe the same serving spoon. So by having boxed lunches, people can be able to get their own packaged lunch that they wouldn't have previously been able to do because we used to do family style. And so that's probably one of our biggest changes. But we've also been continuing on with some of our technology within our platform, because we know that, yes, some of our customers are going to be potentially impacted. They may have to lower their budgets. So we actually have added some new things within to be able, for our client success team, to be able to easily say, okay, where can we scale back? Where can we make your meal program more cost effective for you?
That's great. And, you know, with all the sort of things going on that are negative, there's still been a lot of positivity with businesses, you know, identifying new ways to give back to the community. Yeah, I would love to just, anyone can jump into this one, just different ways that your businesses or other things that you've seen that you're hoping to institute.
We partnered early on with Early Bird Tacos and brewed coffee out the gate for the hospital workers. So Early Birds would deliver tacos and coffee. So that was one way. Another way, we've created partnerships. You know, the restaurant business is really hurting. And so we've partnered with Dominic Kren. She's a 3-time Michelin star female chef who's giving back to her dining group by selling espresso and coffee, as well as Tyler Florence, and doing something similar where Tyler Florence, chef, TV network, right? He came up with the Wolf It Down blend, and that's helping restaurant employees as well.
Yeah, one thing we were able to do at ZeroCater, which I thought was pretty awesome, was since we have a warehouse in South San Francisco, we offer snacks, and within our product offerings, we have a lot of perishable items. And so, you know, what were we going to do with all this stuff? We just can't let it go to waste. And so, our warehouse manager actually partnered up with 2 different local community organizations centered around getting food to homeless population. And so we were able to donate anything that was perishable to those two organizations. However, we weren't unfortunately able to get the dairy donated because there are some strict guidelines around that. But it would, you know, I had that question myself, and it was really neat to hear that, oh, it's already done, it's already taken care of. So
we might be able to connect you. One of another Workstream customer is Strauss Family Creamery. So maybe we can find something in the Workstream family as we, you know, connect more and more existing customers with each other through these webinars and other communities that we're building out. It's you know, great to sort of see how we, you know, how very different businesses are able to connect. And then with, you know, with everything going on, one of the things that people are very cognizant of is, as you start to do the training and the interviewing, is doing it, you know, contactless, making sure that everything is, you know, through things like Zoom. Jerome, I would love to sort of hear about how you originally sort of hacked together our system for video interviews before we made this a native integration.
Yeah, you know, LA has a reputation of having very tough commuting patterns. Highways are clogged all the time. And I've always hated having a queue of people in the lobby waiting to be interviewed. And it just sucks up all this time. People are late, people, whatever. So you know, easily a year and a half ago, we had renamed some of the interview process that Workstream had and changed it to a video interview. And then we've just done it over Skype or FaceTime or something like that. And we only brought them in after we get through that process. So the number of people and the time that we spend in person is really just like the final round. Yeah.
One of the things we're starting to see too is people are adding a 30-second introduce yourself, where they'll ask applicants as soon as the, you know, job seeker sends in the application, they get a text message saying, hey, can you record a 30-second video introducing yourself? And, you know, and then the hiring manager has sort of a hold stage where they can review that and decide whether or not to send them a schedule invitation for a longer Zoom call. But it's, we've seen some very creative videos lately. One of our Workstream, one of the delivery companies that uses Workstream actually started getting 30-second songs sent to him because musicians who are out of work and want to become, you know, want a sort of second job as a driver would write and play on their guitar a full song, which was, yeah, pretty cool. Trying to get permission to share it since there's some unique ones. Are there any sort of strategies that people have changed for the training, just how you're rolling out updates to, you know, to your staff? Are you communicating with them via email, via text message, phone? What are the ways that you're staying in contact with your existing employees? I guess I'll pass this one. Yeah, I mean, Jerome, if you want to start.
Yeah, well, you know, most of my staff is basically customer service. It's no different than a front desk at a hotel, but we're in an office setting. So they're used to being in person, and they have been using apps that are, you know, cloud apps, whether it's a CRM or a sales platform. But once they start working from home, what we did was we started cleaning up a lot of the data that we had been neglecting, and my customer service team became a data team. So we started going back 3 months at a time to say, like, you know, how many inquiries are we getting per month, and developing KPIs that now everyone can understand why we have those KPIs. Whereas if we were primarily like a software company, that would probably be top of mind and front and center. But when you're in person, a lot of times you're just doing in-person transactions. So everyone's had the same tools that they've had before, including this really unique one that we use that we launched last summer called Missive, MISSIVE, and the website missiveapp.com. Anyways, it's a small startup, and what it does is that it embraces, they say that, you know, a lot of people like using Slack, which is fine, except that Slack will never remove email. And so what they took the opposite approach and said, just embrace your email and chat around an email. So it's like a merging GChat and Gmail into one. So if you get an email, you can chat with someone else about the email without having to forward and reply back and forth on the emails. So it's much more fluid. Or for example, you could draft an email and then assign it back to me, and then I finish the email and send it out, almost like a live Google Doc.
I will have to check that out, since there's definitely a lot of email conversations that I wish were on Slack and vice versa. But yeah, hopping over to Eric, you have a lot of independent contractors that you're working with. When things do start to open up, what are your thoughts on sort of rehiring? Are you concerned that they might, be switching over to other jobs? Like how has it been just talking to all of the independent contractors and sort of maintain your communication and plans with them?
That's a good question. And what I've been doing mostly is phone calls, text messages, and emails. And I've tried to provide as much information as I can to the team, mostly about how they can try to replace the income. I think that's the most important thing, because gig workers in this economy are really being hit very hard by the shutdowns. So as we look to returning to the stores, I think it is going to be a different paradigm shift. I think the stores are going to be a lot more actively involved in the processes and procedures that are followed in the stores. I would imagine we're going to be wearing gloves and having masks for a while, and probably we won't be able to go back into the stores right away and just go back to business as usual. In fact, well, is ever going to return. I mean, this has changed the way that everybody thinks about business and the way everybody conducts our businesses too. So for us, we probably will be doing what are called dry tastings. So our independent contractors will basically have the bottles of wine on the table, some point of sale material, and they will invite customers to come over at social distancing space and hear about the product and describe it, and perhaps make some food and wine pairing recommendations, let them know if those wines are on any special sale or not. In this particular type of gig work, many of the contractors work for more than one agency, and so I'm not really too concerned about people not returning. I hear from people every day, when are we going to get started again? And everybody's eager to get back. And so I think it will be a much different working environment, but eventually we'll to get back to where we were, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, and we have a question. Curious to know if any of the panelists have been starting to hire again. More importantly, do new employees indicate an intention to stay, or is it very much a temporary stint before they head back to their original or another role?
I can take that one. So we actually have 2 positions we are hiring for right now. And I definitely have seen, maybe I would say, like a little bit of both. I think there are some people who, are in a position where they have to be looking for a job. But I have actually a couple of people I've been talking to more recently for one of the roles that I'm hoping to actually close out this week, where the candidate wasn't very happy with some changes that had happened in his company prior to COVID. And then now that had happened, I think that kind of motivated him more to start looking. And so I think it's definitely been a variety. I will say that I know my hiring manager definitely had some concerns about that too. Like, oh no, I don't want someone who's just, looking for something to do until the next opportunity. So we're just making sure that we vet that out, and it's an accounting role. So, it's obviously somebody who's going to have, very specific experience. So.
Yeah, nobody wants a temporary accountant.
Yes, we'll need this person for a while. So.
But yeah, for everyone else, are there specific questions you ask in interviews to perhaps screen for whether or not somebody is interested in this just as a temporary or a full-time? I think this goes beyond coronavirus as something just in general. What are you asking? Are there any tricks that you have in hiring to understand people's sort of real motivation and long-term potential?
So I have one quick response. It's very localized to LA, and it's kind of funny. Is that because in LA, so many people are aspiring actors. One quick way to see what their real career goals are is to look them up on IMDb. And if they're on there, then likely they're really just trying to be an actor. And when like people like Shelley and I are trying to hire shift-based hourly workers, that's a flight risk both for they might get a gig and they might get a movie or a TV show in 1 week and you've just trained them, or they start showing up late to work because they were at auditions where they have to leave work early. But yes, LA, we have that all the time. So it's already embedded in like filtering for hires in this town.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think another important question to ask people too is not just like why they're looking, but another question I really like to ask, and this is for any role that I'm hiring for, is, you know, as you're thinking about that next step in your career, what's most important to you? And a lot of times when I'm hiring engineers, I'll say, you know, some people tell me it's technology, location, compensation, company culture, work-life balance. What would that be for you? And maybe it's something I didn't list, and kind of really hear not just why they're looking, but what they want. And it also, I mean, obviously it helps you pair them up to your opportunity, but it gives you kind of a second chance almost to ask the same question, but in a different way, and make sure that, again, it's not the stopover, and where are they wanting to build their career.
And to chime in a little bit, I think another good question to ask any potential new employee is to just describe, where do you see yourself if you get this position, where do you see yourself in our company a year from now or 2 years from now? And just ask people to try to project into they are genuinely and seriously interested in being a long-term person with your company. They should be able to do that. But I think if they flounder and struggle with that question, it should probably raise some doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any questions that you're sort of automating the question as a screener? Right now, because 30 million people filed for unemployment in the past 8 weeks, we're seeing a surge of applicants come in for the open job postings just through Workstream. I mean, we get thousands now for the delivery positions, so that we're seeing Workstream customers add more screening questions, so that as soon as somebody applies, they get like a few quick questions to see if they're really interested. Or for instance, how far away do you live from blank address, and do you have a way to get there? Since a lot of times people are just clicking apply to multiple jobs and don't actually realize like, oh, this is across town. But yeah, are there any automated questions that people are asking through the Workstream app or have in the past?
We've asked some around for like our on-site specialist if they have a food handler's permit, and that helps us forecast to like, is this person ready to start work right away, or are we going to have to put them through the training? So that's one that we typically ask. And then for our drivers, we usually ask, do you have a valid driver's license? We actually did have one person who didn't have a driver's license, and we got all the way to the offer stage, and they said, oh no, I just have to get it renewed. And it turned out there was like a bigger issue, and they actually weren't. And, we were kind of holding this role open, and, you always risk losing the silver medalist candidate for those roles. And especially with drivers, or at least, they go pretty quickly. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, with the sort of drive delivery and other sort of transportation companies that we have on the platform. One of the companies, I believe it, I forget which one it was, but the founder said that he got to the point where he almost like shut down and sold his company because he was having such a hard time hiring and retaining drivers, until, we sort of took him through like, okay, here are the boards you actually need to be posting on, and all these other sort of hacks to get people in the door who are qualified. One of the sort of questions that we're seeing more and more upfront as businesses across the country are all, struggling in different ways, is there's been more interest in tax credits. So for instance, the work opportunity tax credit, where you can get up to $9,600 per employee you hire who is qualified. For instance, like a veteran would be an example of a qualified person. When you do set up your stages as you're interviewing people, where do those questions typically come in? Are you asking people as soon as they submit the application, or are you waiting until you've done some sort of interview question? Just curious how people are sort of arranging, the automated questions right now to screen more people faster. That's sort of an open question. Yeah, maybe are people thinking stuff like where I should and not having this live quite yet?
No, I wasn't aware of the work opportunity tax credit.
I figured you're the PPP man. I was like, Jerome's got to be on top of this.
Yeah, no, I guess we haven't really screened for a special class type of candidate, whether it's veteran or minority or whatever, because we've just been hiring based on skills and experience, kind of regardless.
Yeah, well, definitely something to look into as you go through the process of rehiring. You have to submit for the tax credit within 28 days of the start. Right now, there's a sort of manual step that you can add in Workstream, but we are actually adding like a full integration with it, so it'll be much more of like a one-click, one-click button to confirm that they're qualified and submit it for you. But yeah, definitely something to look into as you're rehiring and are looking for more ways to make some of the 2 months of closure money back. But yeah, and then want to be respectful of everyone's time. I think this has been really helpful. With the reopenings, are there any resources that you would share, or productivity tools such as like Missive that have been very helpful for you that perhaps other people in our community should go check out and learn from?
Well, no, I posted a link for Missive app on the chat, so if anyone wants to just copy and paste that can work. No, I mean, I think for our biggest change was that we had to change, we had to convert our customer service staff to become data people. And it took a little bit because they didn't really understand the big picture of it. They didn't understand the flow of that we never knew really our demographics and all that. Or how our performance, how effective our sales process was. They just kind of did it because they did it. And so then changing them back as we reopen will be hopefully enlightening, because now they'll be in the trenches with kind of more big picture KPIs in mind, because they help develop those.
Very cool.
And if there are any listeners today in the restaurant business, I did read earlier today that the National Restaurant Association has come up with a set of guidelines to be followed for reopening restaurants and things like that. So I think that would be a great resource for anybody who is seeking to return to their prior employment, or if business as well. So that could be a good resource.
I would just add that go into the WHO, reading edd.gov, being an HR person, and then reading business. I read the Business Times in LA. I read the Business Times in San Francisco. Eater has great articles. Workstream, I read your article this morning when I saw it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has some tremendous resources. So to me, it's about staying informed on what the latest thing is locally and wherever our business is, because OSHA just put out some new things. CDC just put out some new symptoms that need to be stayed up to date, and then getting it out to your teams. And any way you can communicate with your team. I know Eric was sharing, speaking to them, emailing them. We even set up a COVID site for our employees where we could stick all the information and links, every aspect of what they might need. So
that's great. What forums, I mean, you mentioned LinkedIn, but what social media sites are people active on? Are LinkedIn groups still, it seems like a lot of them, people aren't very active, whereas Facebook groups, are there still places where you're sort of sharing information with people in your industry?
I'm super active on Facebook. I'm on there easy 2 hours a day, because there's a Facebook group just for PPP. There's a Facebook group just for freelancers and small businesses. And then just among my friends and such, just every little nuance and detail of how to get the PVP, EIDL, what to do with it when you get it, what happens when you get both. And so through all that, I came up with a way to, like, my headcount went down since I had the estimated monthly payroll from last year. So what I did was I just hired one of my 1099s, actually my HR consultant, and we made a deal where I would only hire her for 8 weeks and then basically terminate her afterwards. This allows me to pay her because she was having trouble getting her own unemployment, but also allowed me to reach my headcount. So I think that conversion 1099 W2 is something that not a lot of people are kind of, you're sitting on that possibility and you can easily do that.
It's great to know. And a question just came in from Daphne. This question is for Jerome, but open to all panelists. You mentioned that you've been using Skype as a method of interviewing. Do you feel that you can entirely do away with physical interviews? Otherwise, what's the difference in the way that you conduct the interviews?
Yeah, so I offer Skype mostly as a low common denominator because I know most people have it, especially if you're international. Most of our positions are in person. And so ultimately we have to bring in at least one round of in-person interview where we get to meet them. And what we do is they actually spend like a half day and observe what a typical day is like. So it's fully transparent. They know what they're getting into because not everyone knows what the job of a co-working space employee does. But we actually will use FaceTime or anything else. I don't think it will replace it if you have a job, if you have a company that runs in-person, a lot of in-person transactions or you're an in-person brick and mortar facility. But if you're more of a software company, service oriented, you probably can do it all online. One interesting thing I did find out, at least with a lot of my kind of hourly shift-based workers, is that, and because they tend to be younger, they forget that when you're on FaceTime or Skype or whatever it is, that it's still an interview, but somehow they think because it's over a mobile cam that they can be in their sweats or in PJs or in their bedroom with bad lighting. I think now with work from home, a lot of people are on Zoom, they've gotten better at that. But just 6 weeks ago, I'd be having interviews with people way too casually dressed. Whereas if that same person had come in, they would have dressed up. So it does kind of reveal more quickly who they really are.
Yeah, that is a good point. We are going to be doing video interviews for a little while at our company for our on-site stage. And then what we're going to do is do kind of a Zoom video tour of the office so people could see the space, because that's obviously pretty important. Because if we do allow people to come in, they're going to have to get their temperature read. They're going to have to wear a mask. And I don't know, I feel like to me that would be a little more natural, interviewing somebody with a mask on and them having to wear a mask too. You can't read people's facial expressions as much. So unless somebody's insistent, like, hey, I really, really want to come in and see the office, if we get to say like the reference check stage, we would allow someone to come in, but we definitely are going to try to limit the number of like external guests that may be coming in. And there are guidelines around that too, around social distancing of how many people can be in, how much square footage. So we obviously want to make sure that we're, following all of those guidelines until it's safe to do so, whether that's a vaccine or better testing. And we know, who may have, immunity to it, or they've already had it. But that's kind of what the policy that we're going to be going with for now, until, again, safety first. So.
Yeah, and by the way, anyone can submit questions right now. So we're sort of shifting more to the open Q&A. We have 40 participants. Please feel to submit questions to our panelists. But yeah, and by the way, with the video interviews that we're sort of seeing other companies, how they're setting it up, is they're doing much more of everyone except one person, does a video interview. Before coronavirus, we were seeing one person does a video interview, like a Zoom interview, and then they do the block schedule. So when people come in and they've got to meet with like 3 people, if there's, a hiring manager or, the person, some other people on the team, they would do like one video of a screener and then a block schedule of an in-person. And now we're seeing the block sort of, or, you know, 3 people on the video interview and 1 in person has been a recent shift for a lot of our accounts. I think also the 30-second, just tell me about yourself, in many ways is like does this person look sick in some cases? You know, if, you know, to make sure sort of, are people healthy before they come in, to be like, hey, can you shoot us over a video? I mean, people are very concerned about that, especially with some of the businesses we serve that are in New York and with everything going on there. Before that question came in, forums and groups, other than the Facebook PPP group, are there any other sort of Facebook groups, or perhaps people, you know, like sort of social influencer type people that you're following to get your news from for business updates? You know, Theresea or Shelley would love to know, where do you guys get your news, and where do you interact with other, you know, with colleagues?
I've actually gotten a lot of good information from the Spoon, which is in San Francisco. There's been a lot of really good articles on like what other restaurants are doing. And even though that's not something that like I personally am going to be dictating what those policies look like, I've been able to share some really good resources with our People Ops team. And they have a couple of different webinars that they're doing on like how to safely set up a restaurant kitchen and things like that. Because obviously we're going to be doing, you know, a lot of stuff around food. So.
Cool.
I get most of my information, or a lot of my information, from the Wine Business Monthly. I get a daily feed, gives all sorts of information about the wine industry, the ups and downs of it, and also from Wine Enthusiast and Wine Spectator and big magazines like that, as well as a magazine called Market Watch, which is a great reference tool for the wine and spirits drinks business.
There's an open question about hiring former layoff people you've laid off.
Yes. So since the pandemic started, if you've had to lay off employees, will you be reaching out to those individuals before hiring new employees?
Yeah, so we actually didn't lay off anyone. We reduced hours. California has a special program called WorkShare. It's a type of unemployment program where you get a percentage of your unemployment check based on your percentage of reduction of hours. So that's what we did for the 6 weeks until I got my PPP. And then now everyone's basically back to full time for the next 8 weeks. We were about to hire someone to fulfill the headcount, and because we can afford it. But then someone who was on maternity leave decided to come back. So yeah, anyways, yeah, we didn't really lay off anyone, but I would encourage that because there's a cost of training, cost of interviewing, and you should factor that in. We ran some numbers about a couple of years ago. We were spending a good $3,000 to $5,000 per hire between the recruiting, interviewing time to the training time, and then let's say the first 3 or 4 weeks, assuming they'll make 1 or 2 mistakes that will be costly to me as the employer, it was $3,000 to $5,000. So rehiring someone you laid off would be a really good idea unless you want to lay that person off anyways. I think a lot of these big layoff numbers are reflecting pent-up needs to lay people off, and this is just a kind of a quote-unquote good excuse to lay those people off. But there's also been others who shouldn't have been laid off, and those would be the good hires to rehire.
Yeah, we saw a lot of layoffs happening but even before COVID, like right around the end of the year, beginning of the year, there were a lot of people we had applying for a lot of our jobs that we had open that their companies were downsizing significantly. So, which is unfortunate, you know, but.
Another question. How involved are you with associations, and have they been good help? So I suppose, you know, we mentioned the National Restaurant Association, but what other associations, if any, are you a part of? And, you know, do you find them helpful?
Yeah, in the co-working world, we're a pretty small cottage industry. And since I've been in it since almost the beginning of the co-working industry, I'm kind of the same person that's formed the association. So I've been pretty active. Hopefully it's been helpful for others, but at least among some of us who've been doing this for a while, we've been sharing a lot of information and tips and tricks. So I would put that 10 out of 10 for me.
We have a pretty tight-knit association with coffee, folks. So there's a lot of great collaboration and partnerships and support through that, not just the restaurant association. And then from an HR perspective, like SHRM, there's a lot of HR associations that I'm involved with and I absolutely leverage. There's a lot of reading these days and talking.
And I guess before conferences all got canceled, were there association conferences that you regularly attended?
Yes, and a lot of them have gone to virtual. So it's interesting, the shift that's happening really quickly with offerings becoming just more like this. Yeah.
I'm a member of the Society of Wine Educators, which provides wine and spirits education to professionals in the trade, as well as to anybody who's just learning more about wine and spirits. And they have an annual conference, which I've been able to attend a couple, and attending in California.
I think Eric is breaking up a bit. I'm surprised it hasn't happened more until this point. I wanted to hop over to Theresea. With ZeroCater, are there conferences that you attend that you, actually sell through? So not just, not just sort of the
more like trade shows.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, with ZeroCater, the type of business you have, I'm curious how much of it is events.
Yeah, there's actually not a lot that we do. A lot of our selling is very targeted, right? Because we only feed in very specific markets. There are some trade shows, but I wouldn't say like that's maybe the heaviest place of our where we're getting new prospects. A lot of it is our sales team. We do a lot of marketing. We do a lot of outbound marketing. We do a lot of social media marketing. So, I mean, that's one thing I would say that is a bonus. Like we have a really great marketing team who they've already been doing this. And, again, we have a lot of challenges around being in different locations. So we do a lot of things at distance as it is. But there's not, I wouldn't say there's any like major conferences that we're maybe reliant on for our business. So.
Yeah. Cool. And then we have a question from Robert. Is video conferencing convenient enough that you think you will continue it once COVID is done, or is there really no replacement for an in-person interview?
I'm a big firm believer that we've got to be open-minded to this could be the platform for the future. I've hired people through video in the past, and I think it just depends, and I think it depends on the role. But I think we've got to be open to, you don't always have to fly someone out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's always nice to see people in person. I mean, if that's an option, but I mean, even when I interviewed at ZeroCater, all of my interviews were over video. And I've worked for large tech companies where, my boss was in a different location. I had a boss in Seattle. I had my boss now is in San Francisco. I have employees in San Francisco. I have 2 that I haven't met yet that, I was actually planning a trip out there. And of course that will be postponed, but I don't know. I think I've just been in situations where I've had these distance working relationships, like physical distance working relationships. But I think it's also, what you're accustomed to, but I agree with you, Shelley. I really do think that people are going to need to embrace this as much as possible because it's just safer for everyone.
Sorry. One question that came in through the chat. And by the way, if you submit questions through Q&A, everyone can see that. And so you do that anonymously. Alan asked, on Workstream's tell us about yourself video feature, is that integrated in the platform for the hiring manager to see, or is it a selfie video kind of offline with email, etc.? That can be either for the tell me about yourself video. Usually what is being sent back to the hiring manager is, is the sort of just recorded video that you're text messaging back, or they could have you upload it. There are a few different options depending how you want to have that set up. We also just, because two-way text messaging is built into the platform, a lot of times people prefer to have them just do it as a sort of phone video and be responding to the text message. So it will come in as like an incoming message from an applicant that they can see in their Workstream feed. I feel like that was probably more information, or just probably too many too many options. But the good news is we have an amazing customer success team. Their average response time is under 1 minute. And so in your, if you're a Workstream user in the chat, they can take you through and show you how other people are doing it in their accounts and what it would look like, and set that up for you. Yeah, I'll follow.
And I would echo that on the support, that they are so responsive. Your team is amazing at troubleshooting and providing support. And one of my favorite things about Workstream, having joined, I know you didn't ask this, but in October 2018, we joined using Workstream, and the amount of continuous improvement, elevation, making things even better if you did this is like continuous. So I love how you continue to evolve. Thank you.
Yeah. Completely agree with that too. Sorry for dropping out, everybody. I lost my internet connection. I'm just glad I could make it back. Spotty internet at home. That's one of my issues. So.
Oh, it's an issue for everyone right now. But yeah, I guess unless there are any final questions from the audience, I'm just gonna end with a quick question for all. I'm just gonna give people a few seconds if they wanna get something in there. Okay, well, anyway, I wanted to thank everyone for joining. And then my question, for you, just as the Workstream sort of moderator on this, is, are there any features that you guys want to see us to build? Any quick requests that we can take to our product team and improve Workstream in the future? Would love to know, and yeah, just open it
I will
up.
certainly give that some thought, but I don't have anything to share at the moment.
Yeah, I can't think of anything either. I love how you guys have so many job boards that you push out to. It's actually saved us a lot of money because we don't have to pay for all the other individual ones anymore that we were pushing out through our ATS. And it's saved us a ton of money, and we can keep everything in one place instead of, oh, we got to go check ZipRecruiter, we got to go check here. So
I agree.
Great to hear. I might be following up with you guys to do a case study on just how much money that is. We're trying to build an ROI calculator right now, but it's so difficult where it's, across each industry. So anyway, I'll be following up with you. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining us and being part of the panel, and also for I believe we had over 70 people who tuned in overall, some for 15 minutes and some for the full thing. So we'll be recording this and posting it with a transcript the next few days. If anyone has additional questions, they can reach out to me, Lydia at workstream.us or .is. Honestly, I have both of those emails since we've moved over the domain. So yeah, Lydia at workstream.us. And it was great having you all, and hopefully we'll speak again soon on a future panel.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
It was great being here.
Thanks.
Lydia.
Take care. Bye,
Good.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.